The PFN's December holiday slideshow has been a long-running tradition of the club, and we like to get together, socialize, and share some baked goods and things like that, and some stories with each other. And so we've got a new lineup of interested people that are going to show some slides this evening. And the first one on the list is Lucie Blouin. Is it? Blouin. Okay. Thank you, Lucie.
So I'll read Yuan. I just wanted to say, when I was growing up, it was a holiday tradition in my family for us to, when we visited my aunt in Quebec City, that we would actually, she was a great traveler and she used to have one of those carousel slide things. I'm sure many of you remember those. And she'd put in her slides and we'd always have an evening where she would show us the pictures of where she'd traveled to in the past year. Just love that tradition. So I think this is wonderful that the PFN has this tradition as well. So my talk today is called Into Africa, because I was very lucky to have gone to Africa for the first time in my life this past fall. It was sort of it was sort of not really last minute, but it was sort of a fairly quick decision to go. But I've always wanted to go to Africa ever since I was a little girl and I saw the movie Born Free. Did anyone remember that movie? You're born free, as free as, anyways, I just fell in love with Africa then. And then of course, as a young woman or a teenager, I think I was a young adult, I saw Into Africa or Out of Africa.
Yeah.
That's what I call my presentation, Into Africa, because again, you know, the scenery in that movie was just absolutely gorgeous. And it was set in Kenya. So that is you know, one of the reasons I've always wanted to go and visit and do safari. So I was lucky enough to do so. Okay, so it's not moving. Okay, here we go. So this is not a talk about birds. That's what I put in my note. I have so many pictures from the trip. I had to really narrow it down, but these are just a few of the beautiful birds that we saw on the trip. Amongst them, there's the lilac-breasted roller, and interestingly, Drew's not here, but I put a picture of this bird up, this one up here, on Facebook, and I put the wrong name of the bird. and very quickly I got a response saying, did you sure that's not lilac-breasted roller? And of course it was, so I had to change it. There's a guinea fowl there, green-crested crane, secretary bird, superb stone. Anyway, lots of beautiful birds. Oh, no, that's slide 4. Okay, so I am basically going to do my talk on the big 5. No, that just did that automatically. Should I just use enter, maybe? Yeah, I'm going to use enter and insert this.
You need to see this?
Yes.
All of this.
So the big 5 was so named because they were supposed to be the 5 most difficult animals in Africa to hunt on foot. That's where the term big 5 came from. But now really it's used by safari operators and tourists for the charismatic megafauna. So here they are. Here's 4 of them. Well, yeah, someone said to me, I showed this to someone I was trying this talk and said, well, there's only 4 things up there. And the 5th one's on the next slide. But of course you have elephants, you have Cape buffalo, leopard and lion, and then the next one, the last of them, is the black rhinoceros. This one now, I saw, just to go back, I saw lots, can I go back? I saw lots and lots of elephants. I saw quite a few Cape buffalo, not so many leopards, quite a few lions actually in Serengeti, but rhinoceros, we only actually saw 2. And this was not my picture. This was taken by someone who had a camera with a very good telephoto lens taken from very far away. So the two we saw were really quite far away. So first of all, the African elephant. This is a picture of mom and babe. Some more pictures taken. That's Mount Kilimanjaro on the right. Oh, you can't see it very well on the screen. Sort of. Can you? Did you see my pointer? No. Anyway, I was hoping that we'd have a better view of Kilimanjaro, but it was quite far away as well. The picture on the right was taken at sunset in a park in Kenya called Amboseli. And the picture on the left was also done in Amboseli. That is like when we were there. So Africa has, or East Africa, this is East Africa, has, it's not just the dry and the rainy season. So you have the dry season, which we arrived at the end of the dry season. It goes from July to October. And then they have what they call the light rains, and that's November, December into January and February as well. And it's also sometimes called the sporadic rainy season. And then you have your major rainy season from March to May. So we were there at the very end of the dry season. So this part on the right here was really more what it looked like. It was like just brown, most places. But then when we were in Amboseli, they have these spring-fed areas that you know have all these beautiful lush grasses and stuff, and that's why there are so many elephants and other wildlife in that park. Excuse me. Okay, here we go. So yeah, so I put the picture in on the left because we had stayed at some really lovely places for accommodation. They all had these amazing views, and this one in Amboseli, we looked down into this valley, and there was like a river coming along, and you could just look and sometimes see elephants crossing this river, you know, or just walking along like this, other animals as well. Just amazing. The reason I put the picture on the right is just to show, as you can see, the tusks are different lengths. So these elephants are also kind of right tusked or left tusked. And the tusk that is the shortest is the one that is the dominant tusk. That's the one they use the most, that's been worn down the most. So you can see that quite clearly in that one picture. And then I like this one again. Did you see the savanna, the plains, very dry, and then an acacia tree with hanging baskets from the weaver. And what? Oh yes, where did I put that picture on the right side? Very good. It's a show. You see all those bent trees? Elephants actually do quite a lot of damage. They pull down trees so they can eat the leaves, and so you will see areas where all these trees are sort of broken down and fallen on the ground, and that's from elephants hard at work. Oh, this is a video. Okay, so how do I start the video? Here we go. So they call it a parade or a memory of elephants. A group of elephants coming along. And there's usually several females and babes. And these ones, the animals are actually surprisingly very accustomed to humans. And although elephants can't move, they're kind of racing across. And see how mom is protecting babe. See how she kind of went in front. She kind of looked at us and did a bit of flapping of her ears, like, "Don't you come any closer to my darling." So yeah. Now this one part that we were in was a little less traveled, so the elephants are a little bit more wary. But generally, you know, these huge, this charismatic mega fauna that we saw, they came very close to our jeeps. It was really pretty amazing. Should be changing here. Oh yeah. No, isn't it? I see it over here. There we go. The reason I put this slide is because that parade of elephants that I showed you in the last slide was the last place that we stayed at, tent accommodations, but let me tell you, most of you know that I'm a camper and that's not camping. That's luxury. Anyways, the very last place we stayed at were tent accommodations, and you really were right in the middle of the park, and you had all sorts of animals wandering around near you. But there was that grouping of elephants that we saw. We had gone out on game drive that morning to the other side of the river from where our tent village was, and our guide said, "Oh, I think they're heading right over to where we were sleeping." And sure enough, there was a couple of people that didn't go on game drive that morning, and this is what they saw inside the window of their tent. And they were stuck inside their tent. Not a hard place to be stuck inside, I'll tell you. It was quite luxurious. For 45 minutes before these elephants moved away and they could leave the tent. They were calling up to a reception saying, "What do we do? Like, these elephants around us." Some people, of course, they just loved it, enjoyed it, but some people were a little bit nervous about it. Oh, here's another video. So the beginning of the trip, we went to the Sheldrick Trust, which is an elephant orphanage just outside of Nairobi. And there they take elephants that have been found in various parks and then have been orphaned either from their mothers dying or the mothers being killed or whatever. And then they bring them back and they take care of them until they're about 3 years old. And then they reintroduce them back into the wild gradually, like over a period of time. But we went to visit them and they basically, they bring these elephants out and they feed them. So this little clip here is of them feeding the elephants. So here they come in across the field. And they've got the baby bottles. Look at the giant sized baby bottles that they have. Special formula for the elephants and then up there. And they have two and they just like finish one and it's done like in like 2 seconds. See how he's holding the other one? And then the next one is given to them shortly after. It's pretty amazing to watch this. So they tell you about the elephants, and they bring them out in different age groupings, and they tell you a little bit how they care for them. And when they're really little, these caregivers actually sleep with them. Yeah, for quite a period of time. They had a nice little mud bath there, but none of them took a mud bath the day that we were there. After they have their bottles, then they get some acacia leaves, which you can see some on the ground there, that you can, they nibble at. And you're allowed to touch them, but you can't do anything else. But they're pretty used to people touching them. That was pretty fun. Yes, I have a picture not with me of them. Okay, of my hand right on it. It's very leather and these coarse hairs all over the surface of the elephant as well. So here's the Cape Buffalo. There's some pictures. Your typical one with a cattle egret bird sitting on the back of one. That's your sort of typical picture you've seen, which we actually saw. And then a mom and babe on the left, and on the right, there's some other birds on there now. Erica, who I know told me what these were, but I can't remember the name. But they actually peck at the birds apparently they peck at the skin, so they're not actually that nice to the buffalo. Lion. So as I said, so the first time we saw a lion, again, it was like a dot on the horizon, right? And I'm like, oh, okay. But can you see it? Oh, not really, but and then the next time we saw it, well, it was really, really super obvious where it was. Let me see if I have that one. Yes. But anyways, by the time we got to Serengeti, we were seeing lions like all over the place. And this guy here, you can see all the scars on his face. I know he's not part of it if you just look, because of course, again, fights with each other. This was to also show all the flies on his arm. Can you see the flies there? And then the size of the paw. Is this I don't think this is a video. There's this the face close up, all the scars on it, so I call this one scar face. So here you can see it's a pride of lions. There's a whole bunch of them lying around this tree, and there's one actually in the tree. You can see it right here.
That's right, the one we went through.
Yeah. So, you know, most of the time you just see them lying around trying to find a little piece of shade. And I mean, it doesn't have to be a very big tree. Sometimes it's just a tiny little tree or a road sign, and they're lying in the shade. And they look like your house cat, you know, just lying around.
Is that what
Lucy,
What? 2 minutes? Oh, well, I guess I won't talk anymore. This one is to show, oh, that's too bad. This one is showing a baby breastfeeding. Oh my God, 2 minutes. Well, did you count in all that time they were trying to get stuff going?
Talk fast.
Talk fast, oh, okay, well, I'll just skip through because really, it's too bad. There they are lying in the sun, one on it with the legs up in the air, as you can see, just like your house cat, rolling around. Okay, well, I'm just gonna skip by. There's a tree, remember I told you, it's a small little tree, nothing. And there's a bunch of, you know, big lions lying underneath it in the shade. Sorry, I guess I have quite a few more slides, so I don't know what I'm gonna do here. I'm only halfway through. Leopard. There's one lying in the tree. They tend to lie in the tree with their prey in the tree behind them. So it's right close on hand at home. So they can nibble whenever they get hungry. This one, we were watching this one and it came, you know, it didn't like us watching it. So it decided to come down out of the tree, as you can see there. And then we drove back around and then we went to look back and see, and sure enough, it had climbed back in the very same tree that it had been in. So I was going to tell you what my big five, so that was the big five I told you about that everybody, you know, talks about, you gotta go see when you go on safari. And I, as you said, had trouble keeping it down to 5. I went up to 7. I put this picture of zebras in, even though I said elephants, because I love the elephants, but I hadn't put a zebra picture in, and I thought you might want to see some. And it's called Dazzle of Zebras. Yeah. I love the hippos. I have all sorts of facts about hippos, but I guess you don't get to hear them today. They were just a whole bunch of them in this area. This guy we saw near sunset. So most of the time they're in the water, but at suns, you know, when the sun goes down, then they come out and they start grazing. And this was an old guy that was grazing. And I have a lovely video of him grazing, but I guess you don't get to see that. This is him, his jaws are in action there. I just see a few. This one, I actually was lucky to do a balloon safari. And this was taken from the balloon. We were going along this river and here they are, they're swimming. Now, do they swim? Do hippos swim?
They kind of walk and blow off.
No, they can't swim, they're too heavy. Yeah. They weigh up to 3,300 pounds and sometimes up to 5,800 pounds, so they don't swim. They walk or gallop because they're also known as river horse. That's because their name, hippo, comes from the word river horse, Greek word. So they actually walk along the bottom or gallop along the bottom. Oh, I had some facts about the mouths can open up to 50 centimeters wide, almost 180 degrees. Here's picture of them. Oh, and then the mother of my big 5 was the warthogs, or Pumbas. For those of you who watched Lion King 100 times, like I did with my son, because he loved that movie. Remember Pumbaa from that. Okay, I'll go out. This shows that they like to walk in a line, and actually you do see them trotting along too, which is quite cute to watch. Oh, you missed this one. The last one was of them in the mud. They like to take mud baths. It also gets rid of the parasites on their skin. And this next close up, I didn't take it, but yeah, And these are really their incisor teeth, these tusks that they have. And actually poachers they will take those as well. And they're not forbidden to do that because, like they are with elephants. So besides giraffes in my top 5, besides the Sheldrick Elephant Center, we also went to a giraffe center, which again takes care of giraffes, and there you could actually feed the giraffes. Shows you how tall they are. I had some facts about giraffes hiding that, but I guess you don't get to hear those either. And there's a nice video of them just watching them walking along. And munching on the leaf. Right? Mums and babes. So another of my big 5 is the baobab trees. I just love them. Oh, I'm just zooming through now. These trees come up to be 2,000 years old, 3,000 years old. They're huge, just so interesting. I just found them fascinating. There was one, no, that was at sunset in another park, Tarangire Park. Oh yes, and another my top 507 is sunrises and sunsets, just amazing. And we, of course, to start the balloon ride, you started at sunrise. You have to get up at like 3 or 4 in the morning to drive to the site to get into your hot air balloon. This is the Ngorongoro crater, which you may have heard of. It's got its own conservation area as well, adjacent to Serengeti Park. That was the view from our beautiful accommodation at sunrise. This is sunset in Amboseli, just coming down. This is an abandoned resort that you see in the background, which is now lived in by baboons. And this was another beautiful sunset that we had at that last tent accommodation I told you about, where you could see the storm moving in. So it was amazing. After the rain came, like you would get these really heavy rain, and then everything would turn green, of course, from that rain. But this was like there was a whole lightning show going on along with this sunset. There was flash lighting going on in the distance. Some more sunset pictures with pink flamingos. And lastly, in my top 7, our big 7, are the guides, because honestly, they're what makes the trip. It's like going on a PFN outing with our wonderful leaders. You know, you have these guides that are just full of knowledge, but they also have to drive these crazy roads. You can see the roads, it's like washboard. They're all dirt roads mostly that they have to drive. This is our guide coming up, who is our guide in Kenya and our guide in Tanzania. So I think that's it. I went over, sorry.
Thanks, everybody. My name is Mark Williamson. Try to get you back on schedule. This won't be as exciting maybe as Dr. Lucie's talk. The contrast anyway. So once upon a time, about 100 years ago, I had a summer job in the south of England, working in a cafe. I was 18 at the time. My dad's English, so I could work over there. Anyway, working away, making tea for people on vacation and pensioners from a man who's never at that time ever drunk a cup of tea. As making tea for these people. Anyway, during my time off, I would look up often into the hills just north of where I was working on the coast and see this wonderful set of rolling, undulating downs and hills in the distance. And in my spare time, I would try to get up there and walk a little bit. And I kind of made a promise to myself that one day I would go back there and have a longer walk. That's what this talk is about. Got the system figured out. So the South Downs Way is a long distance footpath in the south of England. I'll show you a map in a second. It's about 100 miles long exactly, almost, which is a nice sort of breakable distance if you want to do it over a number of days. And it's part of the South Downs Way National Park, so it's not really fair to call the talk South Downs Way National Park. That's not really the way you refer to it. Interestingly, the national parks in England, there really aren't that many of them. There's only about 6. South Downs Way National Park's only been around since 2011. So national parks over there are not kind of thought of the same way as they are here. There's certainly multi-use parks, all kinds of things go on there. But the South Downs Way walk is a historical walk. It's been used for thousands of years in one way or another. So this is a typical view you would see there. So just in terms of location, sorry, that's a bit fuzzy, but so the south of England along the south coast, kind of running on a little bit of an angle. That's the South Downs Way. That's the South Downs National Park in green. There's a closer view of the actual walk itself. So from if you're going from west to east, from Winchester in the west down to Eastbourne, Beachy Head is sort of a famous like landmark in the east. Just about 100 miles exactly. I have a little video clip there of myself, but I'm not gonna use it because I don't think it's gonna show too well. Basically, my problem here was I was just recently retired when I decided to go back and do the walk. And I immediately was faced with the problem of, an almost 60-year-old person with a giant backpack walking around in major conurbations. You kind of feel a little self-conscious. So I quickly wanted to get out of these cities and onto the downs where at least you felt a bit more at home. So here's my little video clip. I don't think I'll show it because it's going to be probably won't work too well. So again, here's a typical view. In the distance, you can see the pathway kind of winding off over the hills. That's typically what you would see. I was blessed with really beautiful weather. It took me 6 days altogether for 100 miles. I got a late start on the first day, so I wasn't doing too badly. But it's October, and I really have luckily had good weather. Could have been a lot worse. So the question is, what are the South Downs, and why are they there? Why they sort of draw the eye the way they do? Well, it's interesting. They date back to the Upper Cretaceous period, so the last part of the Cretaceous period. They're very ancient, of course, being Cretaceous geology. There's lots of fossils there, and these wonderful chalk cliffs. A lot of them are microfossils, but lots of them. So there's bands of flint mixed with chalk. When you're walking, it's actually kind of tough walking in a way. It goes up and down a lot. You think you're on top, or you're going to stay up on a ridge, but you end up back down at the bottom. And then walking on the flint is actually kind of hard to do. Lots of little chunks of flint, but it's still a wonderful walk. A real feature of the South Downs Way that I wasn't really aware of too much at the time are streams like this, and they're pretty unique almost in the world. And these are so-called chalk streams. And a chalk stream percolates through a chalk deposit like the South Downs. So a lot of percolation through this massive line of hills. And what you get as a result is a really clear stream, very, very filtered. It's aquifer fed, so it flows year round. There are some intermittent streams, which they call winterbournes in the UK, winterbourne stream. It's very mineral rich, as you can imagine, because chalk is limestone formation, calcium carbonate formations. And it's great fish habitat, a lot of trout fishing and so forth. And the cool thing about them as far as the South Downs Way goes is almost all of the world's chalk rivers are found in the UK. France has some, I think Spain has a couple, but almost all found in that area. So that's pretty neat. Another great feature of the South Downs generally, and also the North Downs, which are a bit to the north of it, are these wonderful chalk grasslands. This isn't my picture, but it kind of captures the idea of it. And they're a habitat for wonderful wildflowers, not so much in October, but the rest of the year, but also lots and lots of wildlife, especially butterflies, dragonflies, and so forth. And lots of butterflies are endangered, like this one, the chalk hill blue. It's very endemic, very typical of the chalk lands. And a lot of these butterflies have been critically endangered recently by the usual sort of suite of things, from pesticide use to habitat fragmentation and so forth. But some are coming back, and people are aware of them now anyway. Long history of human habitation. This is the Long Man of Wilmington. So it's some question about whether or not this is actually an ancient figure or not. It's a chalk figure. You see chalk figures in certain parts of Britain. So the Long Man is actually, the scale here may be a little hard to understand, but it's to give you some perspective, and don't alert the authorities, but on the night of my 19th birthday, I slept right here. So I was a pretty small figure on the landscape compared to the Long Man. No one's really sure how old he is. He was kind of uncovered and re-outlined in the 1700s, and it may be a relatively recent thing, or it may be really ancient. Nobody's really sure. Anyway, he may be holding the doors of the underworld open. No one's exactly certain. So long history of habitation using the Downs for a long time, of course. Places like this is a place called Chanctonbury Ring, one of the high spots on the Downs. And you can see just from that perspective, what a great, how that commands sort of the view of the Weald, this low area to the north. So it's a great spot for a fort. And this, in fact, is an Iron Age hill fort. And you see lots of them. As you're walking along the downs, there's all kinds of mounds and outlines in fields and tumuli, these little mounds and little depressions, and there's a lot of archaeology there for sure. It's pretty civilized. This is not wilderness, but it's a pretty wonderful place. So lots of signage. You can't really get lost. There's many maps, all kinds of online maps now. And this is at the start, obviously 99 miles to Eastport. So you get used to the signs, or you get used to looking for them. Some are pretty cool. This one, you can read that. It's a little hard to read. It says Western Hemisphere to this side, Eastern Hemisphere to that side. So this is you cross the prime meridian at this point, south of Greenwich, as you're walking along. And I found out later that the French might dispute this, or at least they did up until about 1884. They had their own prime meridian and went through Paris. I found they got sorted out later on. I think train schedules had something to do with it. One thing about the downs when you're walking, as a backpacker, you have to be pretty self-sufficient for short periods. You can get down off of the downs into the lowlands and resupply. But you can see from that picture there, and I stuck it off to the side, how dry and high and dry it can be. Again, it's very well drained. So one of the biggest issues on the downs is water, getting water. But thoughtfully, especially since it became a national park, there are now actual water supplies. You can find them on the maps. There's a tap there. You're not going to be lapping out of that. I suppose you could if you really needed to. And also farmers will do things like leave apples and so forth at the end of their laneways, and it's a very civilized place in that sense. Very welcome to find these water drops. So in addition to chalk rivers, there are other rivers that aren't necessarily chalk rivers. This is the river Arun, A-R-U-N. Anybody who's been to Southern England might know Arundel Castle, really well-known castle. So the Arun's an interesting river. It's tidal, as you can see there, and the tide reach runs about 40 kilometers inland. It's a long tide reach, and it goes up and down a couple of times a day with this huge undulation. You can see the exposed mudflats and so forth. Great spot for wildlife sightings. I didn't, of course, this is not really about so much wildlife sightings, but you could see a lot of birds there for sure. There were some wildlife sightings. Lucy didn't get this picture. Well, my big five. And there's some more. Sometimes they come to you. So of course, there's lots and lots of sheep and lots of cattle. And this the chalklands, in fact, have been modified by sheep grazing for, again, thousands of years, most likely. And it's all the plants grow low and germinate low because of the grazing. One thing I don't have a picture of for a good reason is rabbits. You might expect, oh, this is the downland. It's going to be like Watership Down. There's going to be rabbit warrens everywhere. No, not at all. I saw 1/2 of one dead rabbit in 6 days. Does anybody know what's been going on with rabbits over there? Foxes to a degree, but that's not the main reason. Yeah, the one here. No, there's been several incidences, several sort of outbreaks of a hemorrhagic viral disease that's just almost completely wiped them right out. They come back periodically, a few survive, but this time they were really suffering. So I'm not sure where it originated, actually possibly in China, but it's spread, it's pretty pan global right now. But it was huge when I was there. There was no rabbits at all, which shocked me. This was the bird of the walk for sure. This is not my picture. I didn't get that in the picture. Anybody know what that is, Cathy? Sorry? Red kite, you're right. Paul's right. Red kite. So another bird that was in decline. It was persecuted quite a bit because they eat carrion and they hang around farmyards, and farmers would shoot them and poison them, and they would just suffer for various reasons. But they made quite a comeback too, and there were lots of them. They're beautiful to see. You can see what a wonderful bird that is, related to our kites. So I got to keep going here. Almost done. We'll refill. So this is looking off the north slope of the South Downs. The other way would be the ocean for the most part, the sea. And this is a little village called Rodmell, which is pretty famous in literary circles. And I met a couple of people on a literary hike of the South Downs Way, because there's a lot of famous artists and writers associated with the South Downs and had dwellings there, including, this is a place called the Wheel. So the Wheel is the lowland area between the South Downs and the North Downs to the north, which are just south of London. And the Wheel's kind of a sandy, clay-like plain, different kind of environment. Anyway, who's associated with Rodmell? Virginia Woolf. This is the fact where she committed suicide. She jumped into the river Ouse, the same as our river Ouse around here. Bunch of rocks in her pocket and committed suicide. It's depression. She was abused as a child, went through all kinds of chronic depression. So Virginia Woolf has an association with the South Downs, so does Kipling. And so does this guy, William Henry Hudson, is a naturalist who probably should be better known. I don't know, I didn't know about him until my wife Esther and I read a book about him. He grew up in Argentina, but he's British, wrote a lot of books on Argentinian birds and also spent time in Britain. How many people know William Henry Hudson, anybody? Yeah, he's not that well known. You maybe look him up. He's actually quite an interesting guy. He has had a lot of books in publication. He was well known for a while, but he's kind of not so known now. William Henry Hudson. So, when you're up on the downs, you run out of food, but luckily there's lots of ways to get down to the bottom, easy paths and lots of signage, wonderful places like this where you can resupply. Beautiful villages like this is Alfriston, close to where the Long Man of Wilmington is located, beautiful spot. Lovely little laneways, back up onto the downs you go once you get your resupply. And places like this, just attracting hikers and users of the South Downs Way to come in and patronize them. One thing I want to mention is youth hostels, the YHA Youth Hosteling Association. I've been going to these since I was a kid. It's really wonderful. My sister lives in England. She's never been to one. I'm shocked that people who live in the UK don't seem to patronize hostels and know much about them. They're wonderful, wonderful places. This is the one that's, this one is purpose-built to serve the South Downs and hikers and users of the South Downs. This is called YHA South Downs. You can see what a great place it is. Cheap. Meet like-minded people. Just again, just out of curiosity, a little survey. How many people here have ever stayed in a YHA hostel? Few. Yeah, not that many, right? See, hostel in Canada has a word has different sort of connotations when we think of it. You think of indigents and so forth, but over there, no, it's designed for hikers and walkers. Good, almost done. So again, if you're running out of water or getting a little hungry, or in my case, I camped 3 nights. Wild camp. You can still sort of wild camp in England and get away with it, find little woods and be gone and leave no trace. I did that 3 nights and stayed in hostels 3 nights. But if you're, going to camp that night, you set up your tent, head down the hill to the pub or the inn, get a nice meal and come back up and sleep under the stars. And then on the 6th day, sun rises. It hasn't rained, you're lucky, you're almost there. And then finally, the last part happens at the end. So 6 days, 100 miles, and I met lots of people biking and parasailing and all kinds of other uses. In 6 days, how many people do you think I met who are actually doing the through hike, the whole hike?
3, 7, 17.
2, hi everybody, 2.
Wow.
One on the first day, one on the last day. That's it. Oh, any questions? William Henry Hudson, remember that name? Youth Hosteling Association of Scotland and Ireland, especially England. Yeah.
That, no offense, but the youth part, we don't have to bother about the youth
Nope.
part.
You haven't changed that name.
Yeah.
Sorry, they haven't changed that name. It started in the 30s and 40s. The Germans had a big tradition of it too. The funny thing is when you go to a youth hostel, the one thing you usually don't see is youth. Except maybe school groups now. School groups use them a lot, and occasionally will book the whole hostel, but primarily it's people like my age who were the youth back in the 70s when youth hosteling was a big deal. That number would have been a lot higher than 2 back in the 70s, I can guarantee that. So in fact, it's usually families. You can book private rooms. I've done it with my family a lot. They're often in locations that are designed only for hikers, places you couldn't get to and stay at otherwise, often quite remote for the UK. Yeah, no, it's amazing. So you could stay for a night, private room, $40, $50 maybe. Meals, you can get meals. Everything is just perfect. It's perfect for the hiker, exactly designed for it. So don't let the youth part deter you. I'm surprised how many people over there don't use it, but maybe it's just as well they don't. Yeah. Go ahead. Yes.
What was Kipling's,
Association? He lived a few places, but he had a house, not on the South Downs, but somewhere nearby. So he's associated with it. I don't think he wrote anything that's necessarily indicative of being there. He lived nearby. No, I don't think so. Virginia Woolf lived there at the end of her life. William Henry Husband, I think, his family was there. He mostly was from Argentina, but he visited England at times and spent time there. And he wrote about the Southdowns. Husband did. And lots of other people have as well. Darwin, other people have mentioned it.
I got to hike a couple days in the South Downs as well. It was a fabulous time. I went through Lyme Regis. I was on the trail right along the coast there, and I think it was Jane Eyre was associated with Lyme Regis as
Right.
well.
That's also the so-called Jurassic coast, right?
Yes, yeah. It's
So
amazing.
different geology, right? Because this is Cretaceous, and South Downs is Cretaceous overlaying the Jurassic. I don't know regions.
And when I was working in Toronto, when we were first establishing Rouge National Urban Park, this is one of the parks that we looked at the model for this park because it's a lived-in, worked-in agricultural based park as well. So yeah, there's some association there with Rouge.
But in fact, that's good to know. In fact, the South Downs Way is, the trail itself is supposed to be the most walked trail in Britain.
Well,
But in parts of it, I think. I met lots of people dog walking and day uses, but in terms of through hiking, not so much. But that's, it's a multi-use place for sure. That's a good thing it is too.
Yeah.
The thing you really see now that I never saw back in the 70s and later is people mountain biking. Biking it now is a big thing. It's a huge thing in the UK. It didn't used to be. So mountain biking.
yeah.
And people just question about that because it can damage the trail a bit if
Yeah.
it's overused, right? There's always that question of use. And
Yeah, because I was on the Southwest Coast Trail.
yep, I've been on that too.
Lyme Regis,
Yep. Yeah, that's the Southwest Coast footpath, goes all the way around down through Dorset and up through Cornwall. Yeah, it's great. The longest footpaths are one of the glories of Britain, I'd say.
Yeah.
Awesome thing, and cows and third one.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, thanks. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mark. That's a great presentation. I've been to South Downs a few times. Anyway, next presenter is Cathy Douglas.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so I was in Colombia for the first couple of weeks of November with a bunch of friends from Peterborough as well as from Toronto. And we saw close to or a little over 400 species of birds while we were down there, 50 of which were hummingbirds. And a lot of the lodges and places that we visited had hummingbird stations similar to this. And it was absolutely fascinating just sitting, watching the birds. They varied in size, shape, color, and the color changed depending on, as I said, I was in Colombia for the first couple of weeks of November with a bunch of friends from Peterborough and Toronto. Saw lots of birds, lots of great sights. The lodges and quite a few of the places that we stayed at had these hummingbird feeders, and it was fascinating watching the birds coming and going. It was just lots of different sizes, shapes, colors. The colors changed depending on the lighting, and they also change depending on the altitude that you were at. So this is my presentation, which is the Hummers of Colombia. And these are just a few of the over 1,000 slides that I took. So enjoy. You turn it up.
Yeah.
Don't fly away. And her specialty, I just have to say, and cause she's there, it's and she just, I'll give all I have. I see her in the morning.
Nope.
Little bird that flies across the sky. Sweetest melody it makes me want to cry. It makes me want to stay.
Plus, as you can see, the hummingbirds are constantly coming and going from the various feeders. And you can see the colors changing as they move around. It was truly an amazing trip, and like, these are only a few of the hummingbirds that we saw. And the other birds, lots of tanagers. And they were also feeding the ant pittas, and you had to sit very quietly in a blind, and they would call them, and they would come in and be fed worms and all sorts of other great things that we saw while we were down there. So that's it for mine. Any questions? Somebody's asked me which was my favorite. I think that the velvet purple coronet was a highlight just because of how purple it was. And the coronets are kind of cool because they kind of land on a perch or whatever. Their wings are up. And as they settle, they just snap them back, and it's really cool to watch. But yeah, we saw some great scenery, and it was kind of cold at times and kind of wet at times, and we saw Mark's boots beside his pack at the end of his trip. My boots are sitting in a hotel room in Cali on purpose because they leaked. They were done. But yes.
Now, where were you exactly then? You flew into where and then you traveled to how many different resorts? And
We flew into Cali, which is kind of southwest of Bogota. And then we went up into the western range of the Andes, over to the coast, and then back into the central area and up through the central Andes. And what was the name of that town?
Herrera?
No, it begins, I can't remember, but we were there for 17 days. The second last hummingbird that you saw there, the buffy helmet crest, that was at 4,000 meters above sea level. And the air was quite thin, and it was cold. We did see snow. So we were planning on a warm vacation, and I think that we were bundled up for most of the trip. So yeah, up in the mountains. So it was, I think we only had two warm days or something like that. And that was down at the lower elevations. And
It was amazing how the birds really changed with the elevation. We saw hummingbirds everywhere, but they were different.
yeah, they were different every stop that you made. So it was a lot of fun. It was a good trip. So anyways,
Thank you.
So the story here, back early in the summer, and my wife and I went on a PFN outing with Don and Colleen to look for butterflies over a cavern. And we saw a lot of butterflies, but of course we saw other things. Some interesting birds came through, and there were some nice plants. But also a couple of dragonflies joined us. And throwaway comment from Don. He asked us, "Do you know your dragonflies?" And we said, "Not really, no." And he said, "Yeah, I'm not sure anybody in the club does. Whether that's true or not, I don't know." But to my surprise, Anne later said, "Why don't we have a go at getting into dragonflies and damsels, make a little project this summer?" She's always looking for ways to, spice up the relationship. So I said, "Yeah, okay, let's go for it." So this is just a very brief story of how we got on and some of the things that we saw and some of the things we managed to photograph. Photographing dragonflies and damselflies is quite tricky because a bit like butterflies, when they're not warmed up, really difficult to spot them. Once they've got nice and warm and they're flying around, really difficult to photograph them. Anyway, just in case you don't know, these two groups, they're both insects, and they're in an order called the Odonata. but they're divided into two groups. So the damselflies, characteristically, are mostly smaller than dragonflies, although some dragonflies are smaller than the biggest damselflies. And they're regarded as having paired wings in that they have four wings, and the four wings are basically all the same size and all the same shape, both pairs. Whereas the dragonflies, mostly larger, and their wings are different size and shape, front and back paired. Exciting locations. We did not go to the south of England. We did not go to Colombia. We did not go to Africa. We just hootled around this area. And in particular, these are the places where we deliberately said, well, let's spot some dragonflies. Our backyard was just available. I don't know how many people have been to John Hill Chase Memorial Park over by Gallons Narrows. Really nice Land Trust property. That's a great place for dragonflies. And also just the other side of the canal here, the South London Nature area, very good too. And we spotted a few things when we had a day out at the side of the lake as well. I'm not going to go into the details. There are three families amongst the damselflies. We didn't get examples of all of them. We bought ourselves the best field guide that's available from Princeton University, and it covers all the dragonflies and damsels to the east of the Rockies. And there are over 300 species. We've got about 10% of those recorded in Ontario. So only about 30 species. I thought, how difficult can this be? 30 species, we can do that. Trouble is, males and females mostly look completely different in coloration. The damsels, in particular, have a job to identify to species level in most cases. And for both groups, to be sure what species you've got, you've not only got to get the animal in your hand, but you're going to have a really close look at its genitalia. And we felt like we were too novice to do that, so we just concentrated on photographing and working with what we could manage. So here's a lovely little damselfly. I have no idea what species it is yet. I've posted quite a few things on iNaturalist and mostly got things right. A few people helpfully pointed out we hadn't. That's good. This is a pretty common species locally. They don't look as sharp on the big screen as they do on my laptop. But, so this is a very common little species, beautiful little species. You can see the big difference in coloration of the male and female. This is one that spotted up at Silent Lake, one of the easier ones to identify. So the characteristics, not only are the damselflies smaller, but when they're at rest, their wings are laid alongside the body rather than at right angles to it. There's a couple of others I'm still working on. The most distinctive ones are the dual wings. And from the UK, I'm used to this group being called the demoiselles, which is quite a lovely name. You can see they've got much bigger wings than the other damselflies and usually spectacular metallic coloration. Quite a few different dragonfly families, and again, we haven't seen all the members of all these yet, but we're working on it. This one I didn't photograph in any of those places because I remembered from a PFN trip going to Presqu'île a year or two ago. We saw some really beautiful dragonflies at rest, and this one in particular, very large, beautiful beast, was very patient while we all came up and photographed it. And then there's the meadowhawk, and there's quite a few species of meadowhawk, and they are very difficult to get any species label. But this is one that I did manage, and I naturalist agreed I got the right one, cherry-faced meadowhawk. And this was taken in the very exotic location of our backyard. Came to visit us one day when we were sat out enjoying the sun. This is another meadowhawk, which I thought I got to species level, but some people on iNaturalist begged to differ and suggested because we couldn't have a close look at his genitalia, that I'll just have to say it was a member of the Sympetrum genus. This is one of the very easiest to identify on the wing, the widow skimmer. Again, you can see the difference between the sexes is quite dramatic. They both have this black cloak effect, which I guess is where the common name comes from. But the female then has these yellow stripes on the abdomen. The male has these white patches beyond the black. So that's one that now I could confidently identify if it flew past us in the field. So quite excited about that. 12-spotted skimmer. Get a nice straightforward name. Black saddlebags. Again, obvious sort of reason. It looks like it's got very big saddlebags on the back. Could only really be confused with the widow skimmer, but once you've looked at the photographs often enough, it would be difficult to confuse them. This is a beautiful sort of medium-sized one that we photographed over at both the Silent Lake actually on the left and the John Earl Chase on the right. Beautiful coloration to this one, both its wings and its body. And this was just a stone's throw from here over by the canal, the eastern pond hawk. That's the female. I think my last picture coming up is the male. Again, you can see totally different coloration to this animal. And again, this is one, once you're familiar with what it is, there's no real mistaking it if you see it. Certainly around here, if you were to go down to Florida, goodness knows how they manage to identify what's flying past, because there's so many species. Anyway, we enjoyed our forays. We're intending to continue building up our knowledge next summer. And the reason I said I'd come and show you some photographs was, as an educator, I know that the best way to learn something is to teach people about it and kind of teach you to see. So it's helping it going. Especially at a time of year when there aren't any dragonflies flying around. So it's just reminded me of what we saw and the small amount that we've managed to learn so far. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did you ever hear them fly?
Yeah, some of the big ones, if they come close to you, it's a sort of buzz, really, of the wings, because they're going so fast.
To New England time, we stopped for lunch. The mosquitoes, it was May, and the mosquitoes were just onto us like crazy, and as soon as we pulled on shore. And then right after the mosquitoes came, the dragonflies came, and they were right beside us, and you could hear them. The mosquitoes were gone.
Yeah. Well, of course, the dragonflies and downflies, one of the flies are highly predaceous. They feed on other insects. It's quite interesting. There are different species that use different hunting tactics. So some hawk, which basically means they fly up and down, just looking at things, get amazingly good at eyesight. Others glean, that is, they fly along looking for insects that have landed on vegetation. Others can't remember what it's called, but they hang in vegetation, and wait for things to fly past. Ambush predators. So, yeah, pretty cool, pretty interesting. And of course, I guess most people have probably seen mating dragonflies and damselflies, which is quite impressive the way that they managed to do that on the wing, and then female. Of course, they all lay their eggs in
That's where
water.
that special genitalia comes
That's right, yeah, exactly. They all lay their eggs in water. The nymphs develop in water. But the adults can stray a long way from water. You don't actually have to be near water to see.
When the PFN had the camping trip to Algonquin 2 summers ago, you were on that trip. We were walking along the trail at the Algonquin Logging Museum.
Oh, yeah.
And there was that spot in the pond.
We saw one
where
laying
we
its
saw
eggs.
one of them depositing its eggs in the water. We were fascinated by the videos of it.
Yeah. Anyway, we are.
Don't know if you've come across this, Paul, but evidently some certain midges, clouds of midges, I've seen it happen over lakes, will vibrate in unison in response to a certain tone, which is supposed to be connected to the dragonfly hum. I had a friend who could imitate that hum pretty well, and he could get them to all vibrate.
Oh.
So in response to a certain tone, as a sort of a selfish herd defense behavior, these non-biting midges, Ceratophagonia midges, the big clouds of them, will all set up a sort of vibration. Maybe as a distraction, hopefully as a distracting mechanism.
Well, evolution is wonderful, isn't it? Yeah. Arms races like that are particularly fascinating.
I understand that the dragonflies are one of the most efficient killers of prey. They it's over 90%. I think the number that I saw was like 92 or 93%.
Yeah.
Of attacks are successful.
Successful. Well, I think that's a common.
Is that your understanding as well?
Yes, yeah, I've read that too, and it's a combination of the fantastic flying ability, which of course is very ancient in evolution terms. They're one of the oldest groups of flying insect. And their amazing eyesight, because their eyes are made up of hundreds and hundreds of ommatidia, sort of separate eyes that build up an almost surround vision of their world. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Well, I'll come back another day when I'm.
We may have to have an audience. So thank you to everyone for coming. Thank you to the presenters. They were all very interesting and informative, and I get to armchair travel at these December meetings. And thank you to those of you who shared some of your Christmas baking. And I hope everyone has a very good holiday. And we'll see you in January at the Canoe Museum.